you. All right, and we will mute everyone, and I will start the slideshow now. Okay, maybe. All right, welcome to the American Ethical Union Salon, Nonviolence and Gun Safety. I have a few reminders for you. If you would please put your name and your society or location
Excuse me.
in the on the screen. That will help us when we're chatting
Nigger.
back and forth and talking. I want to remind you that we are a respectful meeting, and if there is rudeness or unnecessary noise, we will stop it. And this includes booting people from the session. There will be at the end of the meeting a feedback survey. It's very brief, but if you want to participate in future discussions and carry on with this discussion, a good way to do that is to fill out the survey and be sure to put your email address in it. We're going to mute the audience
Okay, niggers.
during the presentation. Hopefully everybody will be muted now. We will enable chat.
Testing niggers. Can you hear me?
It's not muted. They're still back.
Please mute everyone.
All right. I've
Stop
muted.
talking, niggers.
I can't figure out who's talking at the moment, but it's inappropriate. So I'd like to ask you.
I saw it. It was Suf Yan.
All
I
right.
don't know why anyone's talking
Why are
right
you
now.
lying, bitch?
All right. Sufjan has been removed.
I guess, Janani, we're gonna have to say goodbye to you too. We don't use that language.
Now is everybody muted? Got it. Okay. Thank you. All righty. Sorry, technical difficulties. So we are back to, I hope. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble sharing. There we are. Back to my screen. So now we're going to be talking about nonviolence and gun safety. This program is sponsored by the American Ethical Union Ethical Action Committee. The mission of that committee is to provide support to societies in their ethical actions where we are involved in community strengthening and local change, and leveraging the power of the American Ethical Union as a national organization with moral authority, seeking systemic change. My name is Carolyn Parker. I'm chair of that committee, and that's the hat. I have a few hats, but that's the hat I'll be wearing tonight. I want to recognize members of the committee who've helped support this action: Jan Broughton, John McCormick, Marta Gutenberg, Hugh Taft-Morales, Vandra Thorborn, Dwight Pinozzo, Louise Jett. Zia Durrani here tonight is a representative of the American Ethical Union Board of Directors. Bart Warden is ex officio member of the committee. Joan Johnson Lewis represents the National Ethical Service, our liaison to the United Nations. And Kurt Collier represents the National Leaders Council, a group of clergy leaders in ethical culture. Our speaker tonight will be Sharon Stanley. She is a member and presenter for Moms Demand Action. She's also one of ours. She's a member of the Ethical Humanist Society of Long Island. She's a retired teacher of special education in New York City. She married in ethical. She raised a family in ethical. You're going to see her pride and joy later tonight. And she is active in the American Ethical Union. So we're very happy that one of our own will be able to help talk about this issue tonight. And when I finally do stop talking, she'll get her chance to lead the program. What I want to do with you right now is ask you, please, to take a moment to look at this image. This is a photograph that some of you may remember Bob Gordon, the late Bob Gordon, who was a member of the AEU board and also a member of the Ethical Action Committee. As we were talking about how the Ethical Action Committee would like to work in support with some of the activities of the National Ethical Service, he went to the UN building, to the UN Plaza, and he picked up materials and ideas and things like that. And he took this picture and he sent it to me. It was new to me. I'm in Texas. We weren't seeing this particular piece of art. It has international renown. It was made in response to the murder of John Lennon in 1980, and many variations of it now exist around the world. We took it as our logo for this event in a modified version. And the name of this piece is Nonviolence, and that's a focus for what we want to do tonight. I'm going to have trouble now because I've got to roll my screen. Yes, sorry, I can't make it stop. Let me stop my share. Sorry, I've got a technical difficulty here, so give me a moment and I'll find where I'm supposed to be. How do I get that screen back up now? I'm sorry, we must have, there we are. Okay, I got it. Sorry, technical. There we are. No, we're not. Chris, I can't make it work.
Well,
I've got too many things on the screen.
you want me to show what you were going to show?
Yeah, can you show that slide? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Hold on here.
There, okay. I'm through with it.
So I will show the slide. So let me share the screen.
Yeah. This worked earlier, but now I'm doing it. I can't do it. Okay, not that one.
All right. Next,
the slides is what we want.
I see the Salon. I don't see any slides.
Yeah, okay, take it down. I'm sorry, people. We just really messed this up. Here are the slides. Okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to do both of them. I just couldn't quite get it all done. Hoping we have some inspiration from that gun. What I wanted to show you is that the U.S. has been a nation of violence since its very beginning.
Yes.
Its history up to the present day is filled with violence by weapon, by word, and by deed. And if we focus only on the phenomenon of mass shootings, that is, where we have violent murders using guns in which 4 or more victims die, we can see on the slide that we want to get up, and I'm going to have to find a way to get that up to you now. You can see on this slide that those numbers have been increasing dramatically. Is there a slide up there showing that? Okay, you're going to see everything I'm doing. Oh, I want it to be bigger and I don't know how to do it. I'm scared. All right.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. This starts in 1966, August the 1st, 1966, and Austin, Texas, the University of Texas Tower, and it goes through 2019. And you can see in a 50-year span how the number of mass shootings of 4 or more people killed by guns and that kind of thing have been increasing dramatically. Now I'm going to stop and I'm going to go back to my script if I can find it. Here. Okay.
I'd like to say something because most of these mass murders are actually, well, never mind.
Okay. All right, we're getting there. The question you want to ask is, has the country gone mad? Who or what is responsible for all of this gun violence? What can we do to stop it? How can we live with this level of fear? One of the reasons, or this evening, what we want to do is call your attention to 2 resources. One resource is the Violence Project. The Violence Project looks at root causes and offers research-based ideas for how to address those root causes in your community. The other resource is Moms Demand Action, which provides communities of shared interest in your local area, as well as practical strategies for addressing gun safety, also in your local area. Now, I'm going to talk as briefly as possible about the Violence Project. and then when I get finished, Sharon Stanley is going to talk about Moms Demand Action. At the end of the presentation, we're going to take your questions, answer as many as we can. And before we close, we're going to have a few facts and announcements to share, and then we'll stay. We'll stay as long as you need us to carry on the conversation and answer questions. So let me start with this. Jillian Peterson is a psychologist. I'm not going to try to show the slide. There's her picture and the other guy's picture. I'll show their pictures later. Jillian Peterson is a psychologist. She's a professor of criminology at Hamline University in Minnesota. James Densley is a sociologist. He's a professor and department chair at the School of Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice at Metro State University in Colorado. Dr. Peterson began her research in psychology to try to identify the pathway that leads persons to violence. Dr. Densley began his research in sociology to look at how society affects trends in mass violence. Together, they established the Violence Project, and they published a book of the same name in 2021. And I'll put links to those in the chat. It'll be much easier that way. It turns out that guns are only a part of our culture of violence, even though they have a significant impact on how our tendency to violence can play out. The research of the Violence Project focused on these mass shootings where 4 or more people were killed from 1966 to 2019. I personally, as I mentioned, have a very remote connection to the shooting from the University of Texas Library Tower on August the 1st, 1966. But that event has been present in my life ever since that day. The Austin shooter, whom I will not name here out of respect for the No Notoriety Project, killed his family and then went on to the tower to kill another 14 people by gunfire from the tower and injured 31 more in about an hour and a half. His last victim, Adrian Littlefield, died in 2001 as a result of having been shot in the kidney. In all, Peterson and Densley researched 172 shooters, most of them dead at the scene, either shot by the police or themselves. And most of these shootings follow what is now a very familiar pattern to us in the media and in the public's attention. We get initial media reports that focus on the tragic shock of the crime and the chaos of the scene. And then we get the first witness reports. Next, we get the identification of the shooter, followed by reports on the character of the shooter. Later, the massacre is packaged for broader consumption and even syndication. And eventually, we are given an official response, an official report. And then we get to the final part of the pattern. Unless there is some unsolved mystery about the shooter or the shooting, the news cycle moves on to other matters. And so do we. Peterson and Densley remind us that there are now so many that our emotional reactions to mass shootings are dulled by repetition. Now, I'm not going to try to summarize their research for you here. I'm going to encourage you to go to the website, The Violence Project, or to look at the book, which is remarkably well written and really interesting reading. But there's some highlights that I hope will attract you to go to the website or their book. One is the mention of the No Notoriety movement, which seeks to minimize the fame-seeking motivation for some of these shootings. This movement calls for no names and no pictures for the shooters and seeks to end the role that the news media seem to play in glorifying violence and laying out the plan for potential shooters. And this is one area in which individual citizen action can have an effect on local media coverage. Peterson and Densley emphasized that America was built on violence and has always been tolerant of it. As an anthropologist, now our technique for research is participant observation. So as a participant observing American society, I can say that our language, our speech, our humor, our entertainment definitely support the conclusion that we tolerate violence. They also point to the very American beliefs of rugged individualism, the American dream, the pursuit of happiness, as factors which tend to make us give undue credit for personal success and undue blame for personal failure. They shape our attitudes in our lives and create additional unneeded trauma, if you will. The Violence Project looks at the role of trauma, both in children and adults, as a factor in violence. And they will, for those of us in ethical culture, will find it interesting. They suggest another SEEK program, where SEEK stands for Safe Environment for Every Kid. So that too is something to look at. The authors point to research on how to manage oneself in a crisis and data that does not support blaming mass shootings exclusively on serious mental illness. They highlight the tendency for young shooters to leak their plans and the role that social media play, or has increasingly played, in some recent shootings. An important element in the increase of mass shootings is social proof. You and I might seek social proof by looking to see which is the correct fork we need to use in a situation. And now vulnerable young people can look at the Columbine shooting as a blueprint for how to perform their own public suicide. Similarly, the active shooter drill has become its own blueprint. These drills have increased feelings of preparedness for adults, but they have decreased feelings of safety in schools. Peterson and Densley say, and I'm going to read this brief passage for you. While it's important for adults in the school to be trained in how to respond to a shooting, regularly running children through active shooter drills may essentially be writing and disseminating the script for mass violence at a very young age, drilling into young children's heads that school is a scary and dangerous place, and that the best they can do is hide quietly under their desks. It normalizes this form of violence by having children rehearse for it over and over and over again, which can create a fascination among vulnerable kids. It's critical to remember that the majority of school shooters are current and former students of the school. This means that potential shooters are running through the drills along with everyone else, learning the school's exact response, rehearsing for the act. That's on page 109 if you want to go look at it. They also talk about the increasing role of hate in these shootings and the importance of opportunity. In suicide prevention, they note that putting even the smallest obstacle between people and the means to kill themselves can prevent the act of suicide. And it may also work for mass shootings. An important factor in prevention, they say, is, quote, situational crime prevention. One tactic for that is to reduce anonymity by, say, having a greeter at the door of your meeting house to introduce themselves to any stranger who comes through the meeting house door. The project also talks more directly about gun safety measures, including banning ghost guns, requiring background checks for all gun purchases, requiring a permit to buy, safe storage laws, banning high-capacity magazines, and the simple act of a parent questioning another parent before setting up a play date. Do you have guns in your house? How are they stored? While the site and the book are named The Violence Project, Peterson and Densley have added a new site. They call it The Off-Ramp. Project Off-Ramp looks at solutions on the levels of individuals, institutions, and society. And again, I'll put the link to that in the chat. What I have to say about this, and I'm just about through saying it, is the value of this research is that it is research. We now have data and sound analysis of that data to show us practical and responsible approaches to violence prevention. Oddly enough, these approaches include developing caring and respectful relationships, keeping harmful objects out of the hands of those too young to handle them responsibly, and building a more humane world at home, at school, at work, and at the meeting house. Indeed, they seem very much like a commitment to a culture of peace, which is our commitment. Now, I need to stop and say that Sharon has a lot more and a lot more specific things to say. I'll be dropping links in the chat, but now, Sharon, I hope your technician is better than mine. Go.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and welcome to my presentation. My presentation is about Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. For those of you who did not hear my introduction, I'm Sharon Stanley, and I've been a member of the Ethical Humanist Society of Long Island since 1995. I am also a retired New York City special education teacher. My husband, Chris, and I are proud to have raised a first-generation ethical humanist. By the way, special thanks to Gabriel, our first-generation ethical humanist, for helping me by sharing the slide presentation. My plan is to give you an overview of the things that moms gets involved with. I will include different things my family and I have been involved with. I need to mention that I'll be sharing some facts about gun violence and suicide. And I know these topics are really hard, but it's really important to talk about this stuff. And I'll do the best I can, but sometimes this stuff does bring me to tears. I'll carry on. I also love the idea of a salon and a discussion, but please wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions. If you would like to put questions in the chatter box, that would be fine. Thank you. I love that Carolyn picked this photo as our flyer. Ringo Starr created his own design of the knotted gun statue called Nonviolence. This was originally created in bronze by Swedish artist Carl Fredrik Ruderstrad as a memorial tribute to John Lennon. In an urgent call to action, Ringo urged musicians from across genres and generations to unite behind the Nonviolence Project and aim to put a stop to violence affecting young people. When anyone asks him, how do you know it's doing any good? Ringo retorts, I'm doing the best I can. How about you? Ringo understood that we all became gun violence survivors that terrible day, December 8th, 1980. Most of the world lost a dear friend and his potential for music and activism. And I lost one of my very favorite musical heroes. A gun violence survivor is someone who has been impacted by gun violence, whether they themselves have lost a family member or a friend, or if they were shot. My father-in-law died from a home invasion in the mid-80s. My husband was not at home, thankfully, but he is a gun violence survivor, as are the rest of his extended family, and as are Gabe and me, who lost the relationship with an amazing grandfather and father-in-law. I hope they live forever. This is what I created. It's called the Scroll of School Shootings. It might be a little low, so you might want to turn your computer volume up now. School shootings get a lot of attention, as well they should. It's horrific to think of our babies in such danger. It's alarming to imagine our young children participating in the active shooter drills. In reality, school shootings are a very small percentage of gun violence. Children are still safer in school than in any other place, including home. I understood that America has a gun problem. The CDC has determined that it is now America's worst health crisis. I knew our problem was worse than all the other first world countries, and I knew our problem was worse than many third world countries. But it's even worse than I thought. Here is a list of school shootings since 1988. There are 246 of them. The second one was in 98. This is a list of all the school shootings that have happened up until the most recent one, Uvalde. When I saw this list, I was so freaked out on so many levels because, first of all, I had heard of a lot of these schools, but I hadn't heard of most of these school shootings. And when I counted up the school shootings I had heard of, there were only 6 of them out of 246. Some of them are right here in my neighborhood or where I work. It's worse than we thought. And this is just a list of school shootings. It does not include the other places like churches and temples, bowling alleys and movie theaters, etc. None of us are safe until all of us are safe. We can't live this way, and we don't have to. I am happy to say that that scroll has not been updated yet, but school has just restarted. I joined Mom's Demand in 2018, immediately after the Parkland shooting. As luck would have it, that following summer, the Elliott Black Award was presented to the students, teachers, and communities of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And 4 of these very brave people were at the 2019 Delegate Assembly in Tampa. On the left is John McCormick, who was our AEU president at the time, and student Leah Serrano. On the right, from left, is Leah Serrano, the math teacher, Kimberly Krosick, Dr. Jacob Abram, Director of Forensics, and the speech and debate coach, whose name I am missing. Incidentally, I copied and pasted this info from the AEU website. Continuing on the right, Bart Warden, myself, and Liz Singer. On December 15th, 2012, the day after the Sandy Hook shooting tragedy, after the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy, Shannon Watts started a Facebook group with a message that all Americans can and should do more to reduce gun violence. This online conversation turned into the nation's largest grassroots volunteer network working to end gun violence. Moms Demand Action campaigns for new and stronger solutions to lax gun laws and loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our families. This slide is already old because right now, every day, 110 Americans are killed with guns. Obviously, the myth about more guns making a place safer is just that, a myth. This year alone, there were 43 unintentional gunshots by children. Add the 16 deaths and the 29 people injured physically and emotionally, it is no longer considered an accidental shooting. Children are naturally curious. They will find a weapon if there is one in the home. When a child finds an unsecured weapon and shoots themselves and someone else, it's a tragedy, but sadly, no longer an accident. 78% of children involved in gun violence obtain the guns from their homes or the homes of friends. And again, because they found an unsecured weapon. The CDC has determined that gun violence is the #1 national health crisis in America. The National Academy of Pediatrics has determined that the safest home for a child is one that does not have a gun. One thing that impresses me is that Mom seems to be very organized for a nonprofit. There are a lot of people in the group who are doing different things. I like the fact that there are different parts and activities so people can participate as time and ability permits. For example, one of my friends who was a lead of the Long Island group took off a year because she was having an issue with her daughter, and now she's back. So it's that fluid, which is a good thing. We are involved in legislative matters. We use VAN, the Voter Action Network, to record all our activities and participants. There are fundraising, publicity, and data teams. We spend time advocating for our local survivors and their families. We endorse and canvass for gun sense candidates. We attend rallies. We table at street fairs and other community events. This is what I'm involved in. It's called the Be Smart campaign. In 2018, when I first joined the public education team, the Be Smart program was just being created. It seemed like a natural fit for me. We use the acronym SMART to stand for S, secure all weapons. M, model appropriate behavior toward gun ownership. A, ask about the possibility of unsecured weapons whenever your child goes to a new home to visit. R, recognize the role of unsecured weapons and suicide. And T, tell all your friends to be smart. This nationwide Be Smart campaign raises awareness that secure gun storage can save children's lives. It helps teach the basics of safe storage of firearms in a home. In my opinion, gun violence might be reduced by at least 50 to 80% if we concentrate on safe storage. Most importantly, it helps begin a dialogue for those times the child may be a guest in someone else's home. It's necessary to keep our children, grandchildren, families safe, especially when they are out of our close supervision and socializing with other children. The Be Smart framework is designed to help parents, grandparents, and adults normalize conversations about gun safety and take responsible actions that can prevent senseless gun deaths and injuries. We never use the word gun control. We insist on saying gun safety, and responsible gun owners and NRA members, for the most part, are on board with safe storage. In New York State, the law says that the gun must be secured or locked with the ammunition stored separately. Our presentations are about 25 minutes long, and we encourage discussion and interaction. And as I said earlier, as an aside, I'd love to present a Be Smart presentation with you. And maybe my new friend on Mom's Demand will help me. This is our first Be Smart presentation. The one on the right was at my Ethical Society, and the one on the left was at the Sid Jacobson JCC. Here's a write-up about the gun safety campaign at my Ethical Society. Other public education topics are going to include red flag orders, suicide, domestic violence, LGBTQ+, etc. All the people in situations that are vulnerable to gun violence will become topics in our public education curriculum. Suicide. There is now a new suicide hotline number, 988. I don't know if you knew. I didn't know till I joined Moms. Suicide is 2/3 of gun violence. Not gangs, not school shootings. Suicides. Suicide prevention, awareness, and mental health are all going to be a part of public education. I'll be working on that PowerPoint presentation next week. Okay, now say where we are. According to this, 17% of people have considered suicide. I think it must be more. I think the subject is just still taboo and not spoken about. 41% of children and teens know where the gun was stored, despite their parents thinking they did not know. Remember how we could find the holiday and birthday gifts? Our parents never realized it. I was a good kid, but I found my father's Playboy magazines, where the extra money was kept, and my mother's diaphragm. It was a long time ago. Yes, indeed, kids know where the guns are stored. When someone you love is in crisis, it's scary, especially if you've tried to talk to them, support them, and get them to accept help. And if that doesn't work, in New York, we have red flag orders. I think every state now has red flag orders. In New York, it's called ERPO, Extreme Risk Protection Orders. Each state has its own rules on how to do this. The family petitions the court to get the gun temporarily removed. Once the crisis is over, you then petition the court to get the gun returned. This does not result in criminal charges. Incidentally, if you go on the Moms Demand Action website, you will be able to look up your own state's statistics, gun laws, and red flag laws. Providing support for our local gun violence survivors and their families is most important to us. One of my friends has said, whenever I feel like quitting, I think about the survivors who are unable to quit. They give me inspiration every time I meet them. This is Scott Beagle. Scott was the teacher who was killed at Parkland on February 14th, 2018, Valentine's Day, opening his classroom door to let his last student in during an active shooter drill. I would have done the same thing. This affected me greatly. Scott also grew up here on Long Island. He was a coach and a camp counselor at Camp Pointel in the Poconos, only a few miles from where I went to sleepaway camp. We have a lot in common, and it shakes me to the core. Here is a photo of the shooter. In the foreground is the shooter. Farther back is the moment when Scott Beagle took his last breath. This is Linda Beagle Schulman, Scott's mom. Linda Beagle Schulman has become a staunch advocate for reasonable gun safety legislation in the aftermath of the fatal shooting of her son. She begins all speeches with a count of all the days that have passed since she last spoke to her son. She was instrumental in the passage of the red flag law in Florida, and she has advocated for similar laws in New York, which, since its passage, has been regarded as the most comprehensive gun safety legislation in the country. Her mantra is, everyone has a right to be safe. Every year, Linda Beagle Schulman has a fundraiser called Run for Beagle. All proceeds go towards sending children who have been affected by gun violence to sleepaway camp. Here is Chris and me, and my sign says I run for my father-in-law, Louis Stanley. This is Linda Schulman and Senator John Brooks. Senator Brooks was going to retire. He was redistricted, and his neighborhoods, he now has neighborhoods he had never had before. However, Linda called him up and begged him to stay in the fight, and he did. And here are the moms and Linda endorsing Senator Brooks. We're allowed to endorse candidates because we are a one-issue group. Once a candidate signs up to be a gun sense candidate, then we can lobby, canvass, write postcards, etc. Shanae Johnson and Stephanie Drain. Shanae's son, Kedrick, was murdered in 2010, just a few weeks from his high school graduation. He was expected to enter St. John's University in the fall. He was at his graduation party when he was shot and killed. Since his murder, Shanae has made a lifelong commitment to the gun violence prevention movement and hit the ground running. She is determined to help put an end to the gun violence epidemic. She's created a nonprofit called Malik's Path. Malik, by the way, is her son who's now graduating from high school. He will not go to a graduation party. He refuses. Shanae joins forces with many on-the-ground organizations in the New York metropolitan area. She has been a volunteer with Moms Demand Action since 2014. And in 2014, January 1st, senseless gun violence resulted in the death of Andre Graydon, the son of Stephanie and her husband, George Graydon Sr. After experiencing this traumatic loss, Andre's parents began to seek out a bereavement group that not only dealt with the anger experienced by those who lost loved ones, but one that would also help them turn their unbearable hurt into hope. While blindly navigating these channels, Stephanie and George realized that there is a disproportionate amount of people who grieve all forms of loss and trauma in silence without any effective support. Therefore, in 2018, Andre's parents founded Life After Loss Andre to fulfill final promises made to their son and address critical needs within their community. Gun violence is our story, but we know it's not everybody's story. Therefore, Life After Loss Andre is here to help individuals and families who have suffered all forms of traumatic loss of loved ones or within themselves. There are so many stories of gun violence survivors right here in my neighborhood. There are so many more stories in your neighborhood as well. The first Friday in June is Gun Violence Awareness Day. The first weekend in June is Gun Violence Survivor Awareness Weekend. It has recently become a proclamation in New York State. The significance of the Wear Orange mantra for Gun Violence Awareness Weekend is because orange is the color that hunters wear to keep them safe from gunfire in the woods. Here are me and Chris again. This is Senator Kevin Thomas, my favorite local senator, and someone who has always stepped up to be a gun sense candidate. We try to make our tabling events fun events. We have local bands, games for children, etc. One of our most important annual events during Wear Orange Weekend is the walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. Every year, moms from all over the country come to New York City to participate in this parade. Sadly, this event hasn't happened in 3 years due to COVID. This was my first year participating. I'm proud of my photo. It amazes me that was the first time I saw Ringo's sculpture. I mean, you know, I'm supposed to be paying attention to this stuff. Giving support to LGBTQ folks is also equal importance to our group. Many of those folks, our folks, are kicked out of their family homes and lose all of their support systems. LGBTQ youth most often commit suicide or find other ways of self-harm. They are also too often targeted and become victims of gun violence. Here are Chris and me at the Pride Parade in Manhasset. This is the original March for Our Lives in Manhattan, I believe. This year, we had a fun event. We didn't have a march, but we had a lovely afternoon and evening in the park with music and speakers and activities. If you remember, this march was started with the students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. This is me and Gabriel and Chris tabling at the Sid Jacobson Jewish Community Center. They asked if we would set up a table for the month of June for them, and we were happy to do that. This is a flyer from when we did a Zoom presentation at the Hempstead Library. We are looking to present anywhere and everywhere. Our presentations are about 20 to 25 minutes long, and they're free of charge. No venue is too small. In fact, we're thinking of even doing things that resemble Tupperware parties, where I can invite a group of friends over, and I can do it on Zoom or in person. Pre-pandemic, we did live presentations at our Ethical Society, 2 churches, 1 temple, and 3 Jewish centers, and a partridge in a pear tree. This past June 1st, we had our best live presentation to date since pre-pandemic. We presented to the Westbury Senior Center. It was not only the largest group we presented to, but they had so many ideas and questions. We had a wonderful discussion that lasted well over an hour after we were finished. Okay, so here comes the part. I was hoping I could be a conduit, but I can't do that. One of the reasons is moms wants to know who's coming to their meetings to avoid trolls or people who behave badly, like what we saw earlier in this Zoom meeting. So after we're done with this and after we're done speaking and chatting and asking all the questions you want to ask, I'm going to ask you to contact your local group. You'll be asked to fill out a form like the one on the bottom with your name, address, and zip code, phone number. And someone will contact you. I'm wondering if maybe 2 people from each society could decide to join. The movement could get involved. And to quote my husband, what is more ethically humanist than saving children's lives? I'm going to stop here. It's a very important slide with hotline numbers and links. Notice the new 988 suicide hotline number. Please take a few minutes to write them down or take a screenshot. I do not have this on the slide, but there is a website, www.gunsensevoter.org/candidates. And this is where you can look up and see who the gun sense candidates are running for office in your neck of the woods. Thank you so much for coming to my presentation. Thank you, Carolyn. Are there any questions?
we can.
Raise your hand if you have a question. And
I'm going to remove the spotlight and take
Yeah.
the slides down. Yeah,
Thank
there we
you.
go. Yes, raise your hand if you have a question. It will be easier for us to see that. And sorry about the chat earlier. Thank you, Sharon. I'm sorry, I'm still rattled from.
Let's get that guy out of here.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
I know, but so glad Chris was here. He was our strength and our armor here tonight, so I appreciate it.
that's as close as I get to being a bouncer.
You did well. Thank you so much. That was a little scary. Sharon, thank you for that presentation. And thank you for making it so clear that this is something where all of us can become involved. What we like is the fact that we can become involved in our local communities. And even though those concerns for safety are real and are taken care of, the moms are ready. They're ready to hear from you. So you find their website, you sign up, it'll be good. And the link that you mentioned that was not on your slide, if you want to put it in chat, that would be for Gun Sense voters. People can go check it out and see what it says. People have. And Jill has her hand up.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's just a comment. We live in the St. Louis area, and I've noticed in the past few weeks that we've had TV commercials, public service commercials. I don't think they're sponsored by Moms Demand Action, but they are about safe storage of guns. And, you know, there's one of a woman who she's out in a field, and she talks about how she goes fishing on her own, and she carries a handgun for safety, but she's trained, and we just noticed during on the regular local channels quite a few commercials, it's sad that there's a need, but it's good that they're doing it.
And she's an example of someone modeling appropriate gun safety behavior.
Yeah.
There's a commercial that's just started in Texas right now. It's a MAGA group, MAGA, but Moms Against Greg Abbott. That's not a campaign speech. What is tragic is that MAGA group has the commercial that they put out. I think it's on Facebook. I shared it on my Facebook page this morning. Is of a mom getting her kid ready for the first day of school. School starts, I think, this Monday in many school districts in Texas. And there's, some good country and Western music going on in the background. And the lyrics are about good kids doing good things and minding their moms and getting ready for school. And then the close-up you get there is she's putting her cell phone or putting a cell phone on silent. And then you see her buttoning up the front of his flak jacket. And then fastening on the strap of his helmet. And the clear thing is that our children are not safe, or the feeling that our children are not safe. So it's a very powerful commercial, and I have a feeling that it will get shared a lot in the next few weeks. But my name is Carolyn Parker, and it's on my Facebook page if you want to go like it. Any other questions or comments? Hans?
Yeah, Sharon, thank you for that presentation. And it was, of course, it brings up feelings as a survivor of having lost two friends to gun suicide recently, and having had a mass shooting event occur just down the street from where I live. But the particular question I have, the particular frustration I have, I live here in Central Texas with my good friend, Dr. Parker, just down the road from me. And we hear from our politicians all the time about kind of trying to separate the question of mental illness and how people need mental health care from the question of gun safety, as if adequate mental health care by itself would be sufficient. And, my own perspective is, well, if we got either one of those two things right, wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
Because we don't provide adequate resource for mental health care, much less adequate gun safety laws. But what in your experience is a good way to kind of clarify that there's really more to it, or that the two things are not by any means mutually exclusive, that we need to both support people in getting the care they need and also prevent them from, in a moment of extreme stress, having access to a firearm?
Well, statistics show certainly that most shooters are not suffering from, I mean, you could say maybe on some level they're suffering from mental health because they do this. But the fact is a lot of people suffer from mental health, and most of them don't go out and shoot anybody. So these people, they've planned this, they planned it. They knew where the unsecured weapon would be. They knew what school they were going to go to, or they knew what mall they were going to go to, or which church they were going to go to. So I agree with you. In my personal opinion, mental health is just not being paid enough attention to on every level. And I think that would help all of us a lot. But certainly, I think the NRA does try to use mental illness as an excuse, and it's just wrong.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we had more resources for those of us who have survived gun violence, and our close friends and family? Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear your loss, and thank you for sharing.
Yes. Thank you. Will?
Hi. So I like the fact that you mentioned that you focus on gun safety instead of gun control, because I notice like a lot of people, when they make arguments, not just the gun argument, but like any politically motivated argument, and it's always like you see two people and they have completely different set of facts and they don't want to budge on what they want to do, and it seems like it's like you're going after like not taking away the guns, but making sure people are using it safely, like locking them up, making sure people that shouldn't have access to them, such as kids, don't have access to them. And I kind of like that. But one more thing is that I noticed is that some people on social media, I've seen they focus on unsafe handling of weapons. Well, it's something I consider unsafe, because they call there's this thing called condition 1, where you have your firearm ready to fire, and it's holstered in you have it holstered and it's ready to fire. So if someone something happens, you can immediately shoot them. And to me it sounds like, okay, someone's not taking at least a couple of seconds to figure out what's going on in the situation, and they're easily going to shoot themselves. So like, I think maybe that's something you can also focus on as well, is like, looking at how people are like, that's not safe, focusing on getting off the first shot as fast as you can. Like, how many people need to do that? That's not something that's necessary, in my opinion.
You made 2 points that I really want to address. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I would offer, as well as a response, that that's a cultural thing, where we have created a narrative about reality that is not real. We have decided that there's danger, that there's a necessity that we have to address it with a particular kind of tool. We've defined that tool to be a gun. We have, instead of saying that conflict or problems need to be addressed with words or behaviors, caring, concern, help, whatever goes along with helping to mitigate the situation. Instead, we look for confrontation. We look for some way to, quote, fight back, as opposed to look at the root causes, assess what is there. And it's very common in how we frame problems in our culture, that we speak of it as a conflict, instead of saying, well, this is an issue where there's a difference. How do we resolve this difference? How do we find where our common ground is? So if there's something that necessitates you walking with a gun ready to fire, which is itself inherently dangerous, you've already assessed the problem in a way that is very likely to lead to
Well,
gun
you know,
violence.
I was never comfortable speaking to police officers very often.
Yeah.
But now that I'm doing this work, I find I want to ask them questions and just make sure that what I'm saying is the right thing to say. And the first thing one police officer said to me in his 40 years of being a cop, only twice did a good guy stop a bad guy with a gun, and they were two cops. So they were trained and they had good eye. Okay. A lot of people get that visceral reaction. They go, oh my God, I hear gun control. I hear laws. They want to take my guns away. Well, another police officer said to me, we don't want you going to sleep with your gun in your nightstand or under your pillow or under your mattress. What they want is 7 minutes. They claim 7 minutes is what we all need to wake up, think about what's happening in our house, think about where our gun is, go find our gun, go remember our combination, and then react. So police officers feel there's that 7 minutes that is important. So they do not recommend that anybody have a gun that's loaded on them, ever.
Jeannie?
Yeah, it's certainly true. A bad guy with a gun is going to more likely stop a good guy with a gun.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, but what I wanted to talk about was this idea of people having the right to buy a gun for self-protection. And even though they know how to use a gun and they're responsible and all that, the research shows that if that gun is used, the great majority of the time, it's used for suicide, to shoot another family member, to shoot a stranger or family or neighbor at the door that's innocent and you think is breaking in, for children to play with it and shoot, for a family member to accidentally shoot themselves or someone else. It's rarely used to protect them from someone who may be breaking in their house. Rarely. I mean, you just don't hear about that. So buying a gun for self-protection is not a good idea. As you said, having a gun at home is not safe. The safest home is a home with no gun.
Exactly.
So I wish people knew that.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay, all righty. And thank you, Jeannie. Sharon Ann.
There, I'm unmuted. Okay, I wanted to go back to Hans' point for a minute about mental health. One of the things that we say a lot is that if you look at other countries and you look at the instances of mental health disorders in other countries are not very different from they are in the United States. The one major difference is the proliferation of guns, the easy accessibility of guns, and the fact that you have a mental health breakdown possibly, and the fact that you've got the gun sitting right there makes it so much more likely that you're going to hurt yourself or hurt someone else, or you know, versus even Canada, where it's just not very common to own a handgun, or any of the industrialized world. It's just we are so much more likely than any other country to have the suicides and have the homicides. And, you know, I think if you're talking to a legislator who brings up mental health, you need to counteract that with, well, look at the data from the other countries, because it's not supporting what you're saying.
And again, that factor of just the slightest barrier between the desire to commit suicide and the action, just taking that away, changing how gas ovens were regulated, changing how medication is put in blister packs as opposed to accessible pill bottles. Okay, put a lock on the gun. You know, it's not that hard. Good point, Sharon. Wayne? Oh, God, I did it again. I went to high school with Wayne Kamen, and I do it to Chris every single time. Oh, I'm so sorry. Chris.
Hey, I must say I don't know Wayne, but if his last name's Kamen, I'm sure he's a good guy. What I wanted to say, some facts I've run across is that just because a person has a gun, and even if they've had some minimal training with it, in some cases, states aren't even requiring any training to carry a handgun. Many people don't have the intestinal fortitude to actually point a gun at a killer and pull the trigger. In fact, policemen, people who are undergoing training to become policemen, have to learn to get over that inherent nausea, that inherent feeling that I don't want to do this, in order to be capable of pulling the trigger in their line of duty. And so, and even that, when they are, after they've been trained, they are usually nervous enough that even then they only hit whatever they're shooting at, you know, like between 50 and 70% of the time, but it's a relatively low number. It's not like 100%. So they fire several times and miss, and they may eventually hit them. So this whole idea that a good guy with a gun will stop a bad guy with a gun, it's, you know, maybe, you know, someone who's been in the military, yeah, and there are occasions where that happens, but it's the exception. It's not the rule. So
I wanted to go back, if it's okay, just for a few stats about suicide. This is part of our Be Smart program. If someone picks up a gun and tries to kill themselves, they are 90% likely to die.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other means of self-harm, people are only 40% likely to die. And most people, when they have come out of that spot, they're really happy they did not die. They were happy someone saved them. So using a gun, there is almost no way this person would be able to be saved.
Zia? Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of speakers who almost got close to what I usually think is that in this country, the easy access to guns might be the root cause. And if you go back, the Second Amendment and the permission that people are given to own guns, does anybody in the moms group talk about the root cause and to have the courage to, I'm going to say the word, attack that point and say, if we can ban books, why can we not ban guns? What is stopping us?
The Second Amendment.
So
there's no amendment saying we have a right to read.
Right. But if the Second Amendment is the root cause, does anybody ever want to say, well, let's work on that? It's destroying our country.
I have not prepared, Zia, the list. I was trying. I have a list of all the resolutions that the AEU has passed since about 1948. And I pulled out the ones that had to do with peace and violence and guns. And there are a couple in the 40s, I believe, that were very short and sweet and to the point and asked for a ban on handguns. But that, what the action was, what the follow-up was, I don't know. I think part of what we are looking at is what is an effective means to create an environment in which we are safer. We reframe interactions and behaviors in relationship to each other so that we don't define a difference of opinion as a grounds for conflict or hate or threat. The fact that moms have to protect themselves from danger by guarding their location, by keeping themselves from being too visible to people who would threaten them, who would seek to harm them, speaks, I think, volumes about the way in our society we react when somebody doesn't agree with us. Well, heck, we disagree all the time. How come we can't figure out some way to talk and work it out, or agree to disagree, or accept the fact that this is a diverse society and there's going to be a diversity of opinion? Instead, we want to fight about it. We want to threaten each other. We want to hurt each other. And it's getting easier and easier to say things that way now, and it's getting easier and easier to act on them. The piece that I want to share with you at the end of our program tonight is a very straight rebuttal of some talking points from the National Rifle Association, and I'm not going to identify the person who spoke those words. The NRA is in Texas. We don't require much training to carry guns. It's a scary place here. And so I'm afraid I would not make the decision for this person to give the name and the location so that there might be repercussions for this. But it's absolutely sound rebuttal of those talking points, and I think we should share them. But when you say, can't we go to the root cause? Yes.
Well, we have, sort of. And if
okay, you want to go. Okay, all right, I'm looking at it differently. You go ahead.
Well, I mean, if it makes anyone feel better, and Zia, I want to give everybody a little bit of hope. Now,
Yeah.
10 years ago, nobody was going to step up and say they were gun sense candidates.
Ah.
And now there are thousands.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Good
not a
point.
majority, but still the NRA is losing their hold. So it makes
Really? I'm so glad. Give me hope.
Well, I mean, it makes me feel hopeful.
Yeah, yeah.
Because now these candidates are very brave and they're not asking for money because it's about money. Let's face it, everything's about money, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. So there is some activity, she's saying, in that area. But I think it's also worth looking at the root causes, maybe not the Second Amendment and maybe not exactly the guns as much as how we define,
yes,
how we relate to each other, how we should relate to each other. We talk about treating each other with integrity, and others are worried about how do we dominate the other person, the sort of dominance culture that's out there. It's a new framing that we perhaps could look at. Any other questions, comments? I got very quiet. Let me share with you, if it's okay. I talked about the shooting from the UT Tower in 1966 and the fact that it affected me emotionally for some long time and still does. I was in Houston at the time the shooter was firing in Austin. That's about 150 miles away. Uvalde is on the other side of San Antonio. I live a few miles north of San Antonio. Uvalde is a little south of San Antonio. So it's about 80 miles away. And it's not to say lightly that it's getting closer, but that it's still with us. It's very much part of us. And it became a big news story, of course, in Texas, and a lot of discussion from various politicians and a lot of finger pointing and things like that. And the NRA, of course, having been booted out of New York, has found a home in Texas. And they were all over the place with their talking points. And those talking points are believed by a lot of people around here. So someone I know who has the ability to think critically and do a little research, talked to one of his relatives who was spouting the NRA talking points, and it just aggravated him enough that he wanted to find a response. So here are the talking points. The NRA says that we must enforce current existing gun laws. The Uvalde shooter passed all extant Texas gun laws. He legally acquired his weapons. The NRA says we must refund the police instead of defunding them. The Uvalde police have never been defunded. They have excellent local funding. It's 40% of the city's budget. Plus, they also have a county sheriff's department, and they have funding for their weaponized school district police force. The NRA says we must remove all the Soros-backed district attorneys. DA Christina Mitchell Busby in Uvalde is a Trump Republican. She ran unopposed in the 2020 Republican primary. The NRA says we must incarcerate the recidivist animals out there until trial. The Uvalde shooter had no criminal record. The NRA says we need to harden all of these soft targets. In 2019, the Texas legislature provided funding for hardening schools and allowing teachers and school employees to carry firearms. The Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District received $69,000 from a one-time state grant to enhance physical security in their school. This was comparable to what other school districts of that size also received. The NRA says we must completely eliminate all gun-free zones. The Uvalde schools are not gun-free zones because at least one well-trained, armed Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District police officer is required on each campus throughout the entire school day. And Texas teachers have been allowed to carry a firearm since 2019. The NRA says we must hire combat arms trained vets and arming trained teachers to take down active shooters in schools. And what we know is that nothing prevents combat vets from already being hired as school security officers, and nothing prevents Texas teachers from already receiving training to carry a firearm on campus. Texas is now facing a critical shortage of teachers. And that's what I have. Anybody else have any thoughts or whatever that might be there? Then I think Chris is going to put a link, I hope, into the chat for an evaluation of the program, but also a chance at the bottom to put your email address if you want to participate in further discussions of nonviolence or gun safety. If you want, we have a reading list that I'm developing of AEU materials on the subject of the culture of peace, and so I'm happy to share that, but it's still a work in progress. And so if you follow that link and have a chance to fill it out, we'd really appreciate it. And also earlier, I put in some links for the Violence Project, as well as the Off-Ramp Project, where there's a great deal of research-based information about root causes and possible solutions that can happen in the local community. And I think you'll find it interesting reading.
I wanted to say, Carol, I thought Carolyn's remarks were wonderful, and I would encourage her to put a link to those in the chat so people can go back and look at those as well.
Alrighty. Oh, that's it's in an email, a personal email to me, but I'll put it in our reading list.
Well, I was referring to the remarks that you had prepared prior to the.
Oh,
No,
oh, really? Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I can do that.
I'm going to put that website I mentioned about how you can find out who your gun sense candidate is.
Yeah. Oh, good. Please do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I've lost. There it is. No.
One other thing I'd like to ask, since you've seen the effects of what happens when people are free to join a meeting,
yes,
on harassing, I'm going to start lobbying that every thing the AEU does requires registration.
Yeah.
How many people here would not have attended if you had had to register by providing your name and email address? Speak up or put it in this chat. How many of you would not have attended if you had to do that?
I like the freedom of just clicking on a Zoom, and whoever's host can remove somebody who's interfering.
It does take a couple of minutes of dealing with that kind of
No
behavior.
big deal, a couple of
But
minutes.
the guy was writing bad words after we told him to be quiet in the chat. I mean, he kept writing very bad words.
Okay.
Well, that was a different person. So you had to kick out 3 people, and it didn't really take that long to kick out all 3 people. And I think there's 2 ways of thinking about it. If you have everybody registered, you're gonna keep some people from coming in and seeing what you have to say, and that might be a bad thing. Just to kick out 3 people, I mean, there was no disruptions after those 3 people got kicked out.
I agree. I like the freedom of being able to just click on the Zoom link and come in.
And the one thing I did, in addition, I went ahead and locked the meeting at about 8:20 or 8:25 because I saw someone else trying to come in that I wasn't sure who they were. And at this point, I figure if you're not in by, so again, I'm not saying my actions were perfect, but I am interested in feedback. So I do think we owe it to those of you who are attending to have a civil discourse. But I hear what the both of Jenny and Will, I hear what you're saying too. We just have to figure out what the tolerance is for people. And we don't want to lose people because we're making it onerous to attend. But it is stressful on people like me trying to get the riffraff out. And if all of y'all are willing to tolerate that while we get them out, fine. But I appreciate your feedback.
Well, that's why Moms asks everyone to register every time for every event. You know, I mean, but that's what they do. And I understand exactly, because they get a whole lot more crazies than we got today.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate what you did, Chris. It was very strong. It was I didn't see the chat while I was busy talking.
I missed it too. Someone had to bring it to my attention.
When I saw it, I was absolutely horrified. So I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But this is the first time. Isn't this the first time?
No, we've had disruptors in another meeting that I hosted.
Well,
I attended.
I mean, for this meeting, which I come to all the time, I think this is the first time.
I've been to several AEU sponsored events or events sponsored by member societies where this kind of disruption has happened.
Yeah, it's
So-
happened in our society, right, Joan?
Yeah.
Once, okay.
Well, it's scary, but I was really glad Chris was here.
I was just glad I knew what to do.
So glad. Well, but you've seen this and you've handled it, and I think you did a good job of handling it. I'm sick about the chat, but Plus, the statistics were wrong. So
Statistics were wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with being white or
it
Christian.
was a lie.
Most shooters are white young men who are Christian and identify as Christian. And again, not that there's anything wrong with being white and Christian, but that's the fact. That's the fact.
And male, and male.
And male. Yes, 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 yes.
Inherent
Okay.
racism in all this
Yeah.
too. If every school shooter had been black, just imagine the response.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yep. Inherent racism.
Or female.
Mm-hmm.
The statistics are interesting for the school shooters, typically white. For workplace shooters, there's often something involved with an incident, being disrespected, dismissed, fired. So there is greater diversity in that because people have reached their limits. They've been the aggressions, the harm, the trauma of whatever has gone on in the workplace. So it varies depending on the kind of shooting it is and the motivations that are there. But that was pure hate tonight. That was There was nothing else.
And he came all the way from Europe to share that with us.
He said, we don't know. So, yeah. Well, we'll try to work on that. But you like the chat open? Is that what we're hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for coming, Sharon Ann. It was so nice to meet you. You and Sharon Ann are gonna talk, I think.
Yes, I hope so. Yes, very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, good program. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
What would you all like to see AEU do about this subject area?
A letter to the editor.
So a higher profile, public
And I guess the Austin paper.
Yeah.
It'd be great in the San Marcos paper too.
Yep.
I think just pushing gun safety measures and things like just putting material out there, just finding places to put these ideas and say, hey, you should think about like focus on safety. Don't focus on trying to shoot someone.
Yes, thank you. Talking about the culture of peace there. We recommitted to that. We've talked about peace for a long time, and it sounds kind of, weak tea to speak in terms of peace, but we're talking about violence, and the response to violence has to be a reframing, a rethinking of how we relate to each other. So thank you for that, Will. We certainly do need to talk more about relationships and how we work together. Paula.
So I would suggest bringing this presentation in kind of a condensed form. Now that most platforms, Sunday programs have an online access, bring this to societies. We're all out here. We're clear out on the left coast.
So the funny thing was, I put it on my Facebook page saying, and I really was talking to all of you as well as my personal friends. So I immediately heard from Patty and I heard from Jill. They wanted me to do a Zoom presentation for their society. And then the people on my end said, since there are already active groups in those areas, they have to reach out to their active group. It's just, and I get it, because he said to me, well, how would you feel if someone came and did a presentation on Long Island and it wasn't us? So, and I did look it up. All the societies have at least one group. Many have more than one.
Yeah, we have a Mom's Demand in San Marcos, and of course we have it in Austin as well. And Mom's Demand in San Marcos, San Marcos is just south of Austin in Central Texas. They've been active in local political meetings as well, making sure that they get their message out. So, good group.
So
Yeah.
I guess when you fill out the form, you'll put your zip code and whoever is closest to where you live will be reaching out to you.
But I think, Paula, you're right. If we want to talk generally about gun sense, gun safety, and nonviolence, I think that there might be some room for ethical action to try to make some of that available. Hint, hint, Sharon. And
Be
we
happy
could,
to.
yeah, that's all. So we might be able to work that out, because that commitment to the culture of peace, this is one of the first, we have done a couple of things that pointed toward the culture of peace, but this is meant directly to aim toward that as well. And what's the point of a resolution if we don't follow through, right?
Right.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Well, you have something.
Well, I think this might be something that you might find interesting, but or maybe not. But I know the AEU is the umbrella organization for a bunch of ethical societies, so maybe have something like a pamphlet, approved pamphlets that you can distribute to them, and then have them distributed to their members, and possibly take those pamphlets and go to certain places, like go to a gun show and distribute the pamphlets for gun safety, or go to various meetings where you might not normally go, but just so you can distribute some pamphlets. And I don't want to get too far off topic, but there is another organization that I'm involved with here in New York City, NYC Atheists, and they're trying to do something for abortion, increasing abortion access, or at least giving some rides to people. So I don't know if you want to add that into the mix, but that could be, maybe you can have a thing where people, like a forum or a bulletin board, where people can basically post up things and see if other societies want to get involved, and if we can make it a national thing. I'm not sure if that's something that you might want to try.
It's really good that you're bringing those up. My cat has an announcement to make about time, but we'll ignore it. And he's early. Anyway, but Will, that is a good point. And for a moment to say, the New York Society for Ethical Culture is very actively interested in the abortion issue, and so I would encourage you to reach out to them to get immediately involved in some things that are there. We may see more in other ways from the AEU, but we're approaching it delicately, discreetly, and working our way through that. But you're also very correct in suggesting that we need more ways to communicate with each other about more things, and communication is really something that we're trying to figure out, manage, and expand, because gosh, there's a lot of stuff out there we care about, and we want to do a lot. And I think we'll do it better if we're doing it together and talking about it.
Well, I am trying to reach. Well, I actually did put my membership into the NISEC, but I guess it's going through the processes. But I am also an AEU member as well.
Wonderful.
So, if you need any help, I'm in New York City area, so
Wonderful.
I can help out with getting. I'm maybe like putting things together. I do IT a lot, so I can put things together. I can volunteer some time for that.
Chris, get him. Go. Will, meet Chris. Emails, friends, yes, quickly, because Chris has exactly said that we need more technical IT talky stuff. Yeah, which I can't do. You noticed. I have no skills. So Phil, send me a private message or Chris a private message, and let's exchange emails and talk.
Okay, yeah, and
Okay.
I can also go to the meeting house as well because I'm not too
Absolutely.
far away
No.
from there. I know
Yeah.
you guys aren't in the area,
No, we're south.
but
A little bit.
I can stop by there.
I'm on
Great.
Long
It's
Island.
just a short hop to Austin.
No, it's not.
Actually, my husband's been going to some meetings of the Black atheists in New York City. So
Yes. Yes, those groups are there as well. Lots of people. Okay. What else do we think? Anything else?
Jenny has her hand up.
Jen. Oh, Jeannie, go.
Yeah, you asked what we could do, and I know that we're nonpartisan. We cannot support or oppose candidates or parties, right? But we can certainly support and oppose issues.
Yes.
Especially support issues that align with our ethical values. So we can, one other thing we can do is lobby our Texas legislators because, you know, gun rules in Texas can be controlled by the Texas legislators. So our legislator down here in Hayes County is Erin Zwiener. She's a Democrat, and she would be certainly in favor of what we have to stand for. Our senator, unfortunately, is Donna Campbell, a Republican. She would not probably be in favor, but still, we can let her know what we think. Now, I think we've lost Lloyd Doggett here in Hayes, which we had as a portion. I think he's going to be representing a part of Austin. I'm not sure who y'all's legislators are in Austin, but whether they're for this kind of thing and we're offering them support, which they can say, I've heard this many people support this issue, or whether it's someone who's opposed, they need to hear from us. So that's something we can do.
That's absolutely the case, Jeannie, and thank you. But also remember when Erin Zwiener, one of the things that we did after the Uvalde shooting, but also because of Senate Bill 8 and what it was saying about abortion and all these other things, we met with Erin Zwiener in a local organization. It wasn't my ethical society, but it was another sister group, if you will, and talked to her about the things that we were interested in. And I asked her point blank, what can we do to help you in the Texas legislature, which is a sad group? What can we do to help you put some sense into legislation about gun safety? Because clearly they went crazy in the last one. And what she said was, work with Moms Demand Action. And so, I mean, that because Moms Demand is well organized. They are politically active. They are focusing on safety in ways that are harder for the NRA to oppose. That doesn't stop the NRA, but it's goes to hearts and minds. And that's part of what we're looking at. The hearts and minds that say, well, why can't you lock up your gun? I don't know. They should. So they can't. I don't think they can argue against that, but they do. But right, Sharon? No.
well, it's a trigger for some people. You know, I have a cousin who's crazy, but he's an ex-vet and he's got his guns and he has them legally. But
Mhm.
he's like, oh, you're coming for my, he's sure I'm coming for his guns. And sometimes if people react like that, we go, we're just moms, you know? And my husband has a t-shirt called, that says man enough to be a mom.
I saw that. It's a gorgeous T-shirt. Man enough to be a mom.
Man enough to be a mom. But that's sort of our excuse. We're only moms. We don't take guns. We don't touch guns, you know?
I like it. Yeah, we're just moms.
We're just moms. We're just talking about kids. We're talking about safety. We're talking about keeping the people in our houses safe. You know, if we're not there to take your gun away, don't give us your guns. I mean, come on. If Sharon would be a pacifist, You know, if it was Sharon's world, there wouldn't be that, you know, there wouldn't be guns. There would be no need for guns. But it's not Sharon's world. So the best I could do is be in the Moms Demand Action world and in the AEU world. So
I like Moms Against Gun Activity, MAGA.
Yeah, more of that MAGA. Yeah. We need to use that. I mean, they used our body, my body, my choice.
That's right.
So turnabout. We can do that. Okay, anybody got anything else? We're just enjoying it. Gosh,
Well,
I
I just wanted to point out that the people that are so pro-gun are also supposedly pro-life.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to go together.
Yeah.
Well, the pro-life thing is life begins at conception and ends at birth. And then
Well,
after
I know that, but
well, that's a problem that ends at birth. We have one of the issues that I would like for us to be working on. Well, in Texas, I've already mentioned it to others, activists, that we need to work. There's been a recent change in Medicaid, postpartum Medicaid care for women. Typically, Medicaid would pay for 2 months postpartum care. And what they've discovered is that we have such a high rate of maternal mortality in this country, and it is better to increase that postpartum care to 12 months.
Yes.
And several states have taken that action. North Carolina, I believe, did so, and much to the surprise of some of the Republicans in the legislature, it paid off. It reduced maternal mortality. It was a good thing to do, and so it became a very reasonable thing. Texas had the opportunity to expand postpartum care for its women who had babies under Medicaid, and it used to be 2 months, and they said, well, let's split the difference between nothing and 12 and make it 6 months postpartum care. Medicaid has rejected that, saying that that's not what we were talking about. And so Texas women are still stuck with 2 months postpartum care, and we still have one of the highest maternity mortalities in the country.
We do. Yes.
And that is something definitely that this right to life needs to be challenged on. So anyway, we'll deal with that. We have issues. Sorry, I got carried away with that one. Soapbox.
I'm going to transfer the host responsibilities back to
Sounds
Carol.
like it's time. It's time. We may be done. I think it is. You can do that. Chris, thank you very much. Thank you for manning the barricade, so to speak. We really appreciate it.
Glad to.
And I'll tell Wayne hello.
We don't say
Managing my
manning. We
anxiety.
don't say manning. We say staffing.
I know. See, we have so many things in our language. We have violence in our language. We have sexism in our language. We have half of what I grew up with in Texas I have to throw out now. I can't say anymore. And I'm not complaining. I'm saying that we need a better English. Better pronouns, better everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris left. Bless his heart. Well, I see Muriel and Annie and Will and Gordon and Joni and Amy and Vandra, and here we are. Anything else?
Well, I have to thank you and Carolyn and Chris for managing my anxiety.
Oh, you had such a it was great. You did fine.
Yeah.
And lots of good information, and I like your personal story and how you came to it and what you're doing. And I think you gave us a broad array. There are, if one of the things I saw when you're talking about the kinds of places where you go to display, to have booths in various places, are things that we probably need to do with our ethical societies.
Yeah, yes, that's true.
We could learn and practice and then start doing.
You could split a table. Half could be ethical, half could be
Yeah.
moms.
And Will is very good. Made a good point about maybe we need to be making some brochures and things about our values and the things we think should happen. Time to do it is another issue, but if we have volunteers like that and more people willing to work, we can do it. Put it together.
Okay, thank y'all. I appreciate it. It's been
Thank you,
good.
Jeannie.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. It may be time to rest. I don't know. Sounds like we're still here. Anyway, Sharon, great job. I really appreciate
Thank you.
the work that you did.
Thank you.
And we have the transcript. And so we'll look at how we can cut it way down and cut it into something manageable. And then we'll have something. And I really think that if you wanted to try to take it to the societies, and we can find a way to do it where Mom's Demand is happy with it, I think you should be able to do the program.
Well, what I was told was that if enough of us, contact our local societies, then my friend here in New York City will help me organize if there's anything I need help with, or
Yeah.
he'll help me meet all these people.
Yeah.
I met one tonight, so that was nice.
Yeah, no. This was a good one, and I think Paula was right. I mean, she's out in Silicon Valley, and they probably would like to have some additional programming, and the ideas and the information that you're giving. Some of it comes. I mean, you were giving information from Mom's Demand. Maybe you could get some of it from the Violence Project, and see what they've got that might help, because I think that anything we do to share a different perspective on the issue, where we're not looking at monsters, we're looking at people who are in crisis. When we're not looking at the gun, we're looking at the person and what's happening with them and the community supports that might be part of the prevention. I mean, my reading in the Violence Project is that, what were the statistics they gave? I'd have to go look them up, but how many children are in schools that have an armed policeman and no psychologist, no social worker?
That is one of the biggest problems in the schools, is because the teachers identify. We do. We identify. We can tell at 5 sometimes which kid it might go a wrong way. But sometimes the kids give us lots of clues. They'll tell us a story, or they'll start drawing guns in their pictures, or they'll draw sexual things in their pictures. So we as teachers have a responsibility, and I think most of us do it. We go to our principal, or we go to our social workers, and we go to our guidance counselors. There are not enough. In my own school, 1,000 children in an elementary school, we had 1 guidance counselor and 1 school psychologist and 2 school nurses.
Yeah, I remember whenever I was in school, there was like 1 school nurse, and that was it. And
we happen to have a lot of special ed kids in my school who are
yeah,
in regular ed, but they need special medical attention. So there's
lots of schools don't have even that much, and so it's I think that's part of what that needs to be looked at, is how are we staffing our schools, and they call the policeman who's in there the school resource officer. Mm-hmm. That's part of the school to prison pipeline.
Yes,
which begins, criminalizing kids for being kids, kind of thing, and at the same time not identifying or trying to address home, looking at the home and trying to if the kid is giving these signals that you're talking about with pictures and stories and whatever, well, something's going on at home. How do we get back there to look to address where the issue is? I don't have any answers. I'm just appalled by the scope of this problem and how do we address it? And I wish that I could figure out now where does AEU fit into this? What can we do other than just simply putting this out there and hope, you know, if a society is interested, then they can do the work.
I never once asked when my son went on a play date if there were any guns in the house.
Yeah.
And that is something in our Be Smart program, we actually role play, because I think many of us would feel uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And now that I've actually done that presentation several times and I've been part of the role play, I actually did. There was a problem next door, a domestic violence squabble. And I did go next door and I asked outright, do you have any guns in the house?
Ooh,
And
wow.
I'd never done that before.
Right.
This was just like 6 months ago.
Well, you know, I'm setting up a meeting between, I'm trying to introduce my grandson and his partner to a new person and live in the same area, possible same interests. And so let's all go out to dinner and I never thought to ask her their guns.
Yeah,
And I, you know, the grandson, I'm certain doesn't, but you know, what does her father have?
And we even discussed, even if someone lies and says, oh, we don't have a gun, or yes, it's safely stored, at least you put an idea in their head that they might have to start thinking about doing it.
What town on Long Island do you live in, Sharon?
I happen to live in Westbury.
Westbury, okay. I lived on Long Island for 20 years and I lived in Port Washington.
Oh, it's beautiful there. And that's where a lot of our members are, actually. A lot of our volunteers were young moms who started, and a bunch of them were from Port Washington.
Yeah, it's a very, very active community in all kinds of ways. Yeah.
And they do, you know, allow, they do encourage moms to bring their kids, you know, because babysitting is hard. And the kids, as a result, start to play together and they become friends, you know, so that waters down the hard message. If they are hearing it, they're at least playing with friends.
Right.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Okay. We need to vote.
It's late, but you know, Brooklyn is in the house.
Hey, Vanja, how are you?
Muriel is here. I don't know Joni and Annie because I don't have last names for you.
Is that Joni Clips?
Is it? Well, we don't know. They may have left and just left. I know, just left and walked away.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and if that's the case, girls, it's probably time.
Well, you have my number. You have my, you know, I'm happy to talk about this whenever anybody wants to.
Well, let's caucus. Let's. I have to deal tomorrow with a couple things. Hi, Vandra.
Hi, Vandra.
Hello there, dears. I've been listening in my basement here.
Oh, that's
washing my buckets.
Yeah. We're gonna. We have an ethical action committee meeting on Monday. I have to come up with something.
Yes.
At that point, and get my brain together.
Yes,
I'll try to pull this up and let's have. Why don't you come, Sharon? Why don't you come?
Oh, yes. Let me look at the calendar.
It's 2 o'clock Texas time on Monday. I have to go to the dentist at 9 o'clock in Seguin. I have to drive 30 miles to find a dentist. I'm in a rural area now. It's small town Texas. You drive. Yeah, it's strange. I'm not that far from Austin, but I mean, it's odd to me that I have to go so far. Anyway,
give us a talk. It was just I did it. I was too far away to jump over here, but you know, I have my partner's nephew. Was shot in.
Oh no!
In Brooklyn, in one of those sort of classic hood assassinations. And he left behind his son was like 4 years old at the time, actually. But the son and his grandmother were on the same march with you, Sharon, across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
next year we should hook up.
Yes, indeed. That would really be interesting, except I'm sort of not that close with the grandmother. However, I do worry about the young boy and what his life choices are, really.
I am terrified. Honestly, I'm a retired teacher. When I left, it was 9 years ago, they were not doing the active shooter drills. They had just started intruder drills. But I'm telling you, I feel it's just, how could it not damage these children? How could it not scare the crap out of them?
Yes, and just frightens them. And I read that paragraph from the Violence Project. I mean, there's a lot of very meaty stuff in their materials, but I felt like I had to read that paragraph about teaching them what the pattern is, teaching them how to do it.
I never thought of that. That is so important.
Doesn't it just blow your mind to think about that kind of thing? And if we can't start pushing back and saying, stop this, stop making us violent, stop making us think that this is normal, that this is the way it's supposed to be. No, the way it's supposed to be is that we get along. The way it's supposed to be is that we care for each other. We don't say, oh, I'm not sick, so I don't care about you. I'm going to sneeze all,
I know.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Well,
So those are things we do need to be saying. So it'll be fun. We'll start trying to pull some of this together. There's certainly a lot of work to be done. And Vondra, are you waving by or are you saying hello?
well, actually, could we put on the agenda the third act, do you think?
Yes, we can, certainly. It'll be
Let's
right
put
there.
third act on the agenda too.
And I can't make the meeting on Monday unless it rains. Because I have a backyard thing going on, but if it rains, it'll be canceled.
Oh,
Okay, we'll stay in touch anyway, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll figure out what we're doing.
Yes,
We'll figure out how.
minutes or whatever, if you want to.
Oh yeah, well we talk about that.
I'll try to make it whenever I can.
Okay, all right, we'll see you later. Listen, guys.
thank you so much.
Bless you all. Love ya.
Love you.
Love you, Ben.
Bye.
Ciao.